lesson 2 as far as quadratic is concerned. So in this lesson, we'll be talking about how to solve quadratic equation by factorization method. Now, whenever you want to solve a quadratic by factorization method, please note the following things. 1, you must know that a quadratic equation is an equation of the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. Number 2, you must know that if the product of two things is equals to 0, for instance, AB is equals to 0, then automatically is either the first is equals to 0 or the second is equals to 0. So that means that A is equals to 0 or B is equals to 0. Please note that when you multiply two things together and it is equals to 0, the first must be equals to 0 or the second must be equals to 0. So for instance, if I have x plus A into x plus b, product of two things, equals to 0, then automatically x plus A must be equals to 0 or x plus b must be equals to 0. It is important to take note of this. Then note also that after solving a quadratic equation, the answers you obtain are called the roots of the equation. For instance, if you are finished solving, we say that x is equals to 3 or x is equals to 2. So these numbers 3 and 2 are called the roots of the equation. In summary, a quadratic equation is an equation of the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. Secondly, when you multiply two things together and it is equals to 0, then the first must be equals to 0 or the second must be equals to 0. And then lastly, the answers you obtain after solving a quadratic equation is called the root of the equation. So what that means is that after you finish, in a question you can be asked, find the values of x or find the values of the unknown. Remember, unknown means variables also. So if you don't say variables, you say unknown. So questions can come in this form. Find the variable in this equation, or find the unknown, or find the value of x. If you don't hear any of those things, you can also hear find the roots of the equation. They all mean one and the same thing. So how then do you solve a problem using factorization method? Let me give us an example. Let's say I have x squared plus 7x plus 10 equals to 0. I want to solve this quadratic equation. How do you solve it? Now, note, there are three terms in this quadratic. 1, 2, 3. This is the constants. This is the sum side and this is the product. How do you do this? Remember what you were told, that you must find two numbers such that when you multiply those two numbers, you get the constant term. And when you add those two same numbers, you get the sum, which is this 7 here. And then also note that at this point, the coefficient of x squared is 1. There are questions that will come where the coefficient here can be maybe 2. There are different ways to handle it, but let me begin with this, where the coefficient is just 1. So what do? Find two numbers that when you multiply, you get the constants, and when you add, you get this number 7. This is one thing I like showing my students. Pick that number 10, find the factors by using LCM method. So you can do something like this. 10. 2 goes into 10, 5. 5 goes into 5, 1. So you can say 2 and 5. So that means 2 and 5. If 2 and 5 are the factors, the factors of 10, it therefore means that let's check whether it will give us what we want. Let's multiply these two numbers. 2 times 5. The answer is 10. Let's add these two numbers. 2 plus 5. The answer is 7. So you can see that we multiply 2 and 5 to obtain 10. I will also add these 2 and 5 to obtain 7. It therefore means that the two numbers are 2 and 5. Next thing you do is carry those two numbers and substitute, that is to say, put it in the place of 7x. But you know that this 2 and 5 is coming to occupy the place of 7x. So it therefore means that I will attach x to the numbers x and x. So carry the two of them, substitute in the place of 7x. So that will be x squared plus 2x plus 5x then plus 10 equals to 0. Now, of course, you see, if we add 2x plus 5x, it will give you 7x. Why that substitution? It now turns this quadratic equation of 3 terms 1, 2, 3 to 4 terms 1, 2, 3, 4. Next step, group it in 2's. So you have x squared plus 2x plus and then 5x plus 10 equals to 0. Next, you factorize. So that's where the factorization now comes in. How do you factorize? Let's look at the first bracket. In this bracket, you can see that how many x is here? You see it's 2. That is x times x. And how many x is here? 1. So you will say x is common here, x is common here. You bring out x, that is, you factor out x. When you do that, nothing else is common. So here, 1x is remaining out of 2. Remember, you have factored out 1. So 1 is remaining. Look at it. X plus. Having factored out x, you are left with 2 plus 2. Then plus. You now move to the next bracket. This is 5x. Now, this 10 here has 2 factors inside. Remember, those 2 factors, which is 2 and 5. So 10 here is 2 times 5. So meaning that 5 is common here, 5 is common here. I will factor out 5 into, now when you factor out 5, you are left with x here, plus when you factor out 5 here, you are left with 2 plus 2 equals to 0. After that factorization, you must have 2 similar brackets. Look at this, positive sign separates this from this. So if you look at this side, x plus 2 is common, x plus 2 is common. You factor out 1x plus 2. Okay? Then, in this side, having brought out x plus 2, x plus 2, here, you are left with x. So you put it in another bracket, x plus, then this 5 here, 5 equals to 0. Let me take it off. Then, remember what we said, that when you are solving quadratic, that if the product of two terms AB is equals to 0, look at it here, x plus 2 times x plus 5 is equals to 0. Then is either the first one is equals to 0 or the second one is equals to 0. So that means that x plus 2 will be equals to 0, x plus 2 equals to 0, or x plus 5 equals to 0. That's x plus 5 is equals to 0. Here now, this is just finding your value of x. So from here you can see that x is equals to, when plus 2 crosses this, of course it will be 0 minus 2. When it crosses 0 minus 2, so that will be 0 minus 2 is minus 2. Okay, so when x plus this plus 2 crosses to become minus 2, or plus 5 will cross to become, or x is equals to minus 5. So therefore x is equals to minus 2 comma minus 5. So minus 2 and minus 5 is what we now call the roots of this quadratic equation. Let me use this. I'm done with the problem. This is actually the answer, but let me explain something. You can be given a quadratic. Let's assume that it was like this: x squared plus 7x plus 10. You will not be asked to find the root of this equation. Remember what I said in the introduction, that you can only find the values of x if it is equals to 0. But at this point, it is not equals to 0. So what you do here is that you can only be asked to factorize. So if you are given a quadratic expression and you are asked to factorize, this is exactly where your answer will stop. That means that x plus 2 and x plus 5 are the factors of this quadratic expression. You stop here, x plus 2 and x plus 5. So these are the factors of this quadratic expression. Meaning that if you expand, remember the opposite of factorization is expansion. So we factorize to get to this. What you do to get back to this is that you expand this. If you expand, you get back to this. But if it is equals to 0, then you'll be asked to find the roots of the equation, which we have obtained to be minus 2 and minus 5. Now, what do you do to get back to this from this given root? You are asked to form a quadratic equation. And of course, you see in the objective of this class, you saw something like formation of quadratic equation. So, which means that you can form back this quadratic equation from the roots. And we'll do that when we get there. So this is just example number 1, and this is exactly how to go about it. I'm going to add just 2 more examples for further clarification. Thank you.
Mathematics tutorial.
Here is the second example. We have 6x squared equals to minus 7x minus 2. Please note that anytime you are faced with a quadratic, there is a general form, and the general form is ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. So whenever you are faced with quadratic, always try to arrange the terms such that they appear in this form. So having said that, we can apply that here. So I want to write this in this form. I have this to be 6x squared minus 7x will move to this side to become plus 7x. Minus 2 will move to become plus 2 equals to 0. That's always the first thing. Now, if you look at this, it's different from the first one that was x squared plus 7x plus 10 equals to 0. The difference is that this one, the coefficient is 1, but here the coefficient is 6. So there's a different way to tackle this. And what do we do? First, always when there is a term here, use this number here, 6, to multiply the constant term. So you have 6 times 2, which is 12. So physically, you allow the 2 to be there, but in your mind, what is there is 12. Okay? Now remember what I did. You are going to break down 12 in such a way that when you multiply those two numbers, you get this number 12, and then when you add them, you get the number 6. So you will agree with me that the factors of 12 are, 3 can go to give you 4, and then 4 can go and you get 1. Or even if you want to go this way, 2 here, 6, 2 here, 3, 3 here, 1. So if you multiply 2 times 2, 4, and then 3, is still the same thing. So now the two numbers are 4 and 3. Now let's multiply. 4 times 3 will give us 12, which is this 12 here. And then 4 plus 3 will give us 7, which is this 7 here. So that means that the two numbers that when you multiply, you get 12, and when you add, you get 7, is 4 and 3. Don't forget the rule. You attach x to the numbers, then substitute them in the place of 7x. So you have 6x squared plus 4x plus 3x plus 12, plus 2. Remember, you multiply this with this to get 12. But in the normal sense, you allow this 2 to be there, plus 2. Okay? Now let's group it in twos. 6x squared plus 4x plus 3x plus 2 equals to 0. Now let's factorize. You see, we are going to ask ourselves what is common here and here. So you will agree with me that 6 here is 2 times 3 and 4 here is 2 times 2. So that means that 2 is common here, 2 is common here. I will factor out 2. Okay. X, how many x is here? 2. So x is here, x is here. I'll factor out x into having factored out 2. And then because this x square is x times x, so I have factored out 1x. I'm left with 1x times this 3, which is 3x plus I have factored out 2. I have also factored out x, so I'll be left with 2 only. Look at it, plus 2. Then plus, now if you look at this bracket, 3x plus 2, if you look at this, 3 is here, no 3, x is here, no x, so that means nothing is common. At that point, we say that 1 is common, since nothing is common. So the only thing that is common is 1. Because if you multiply 1 times the whole of this will still give you the whole of this. So since nothing is common here and here, that means 1 is common. You write 1 into 3x plus 2 equals to 0. You will agree with me that the brackets are the same. The brackets are the same. So 3x plus 2 is common, 3x plus 2 is common. You factor out 3x plus 2. Here, what is left is 2x plus what is left here is 1. So you have 2x plus 1. Put it in another bracket. 2x plus 1 equals to 0. So remember the rule that when the product of two things is equals to 0, it means that the first one is equals to 0 or the second one is equals to 0. So at that point, we'll now find the values of x. Now let's solve for x in the first one. First of all, collect like terms. So 3x equals to plus 2 will cross to become minus 2. Now what's the coefficient of 3x here? The coefficient of x here rather is 3. So you divide both sides by 3. This and this will go. So that x is equals to minus 2 over 3. Here, 2x is equals to plus 1 will move to become minus 1. Divide both sides by 2. So this and this is gone, and x is equals to minus 1 over 2. So therefore, the roots of the equation are minus 1 over 2 or minus 2 over 3. These are the roots of this equation. That's example number 2. I'm still going to quickly give us some other examples as it will really help us to understand data. But still in this video, or maybe the next video, I will also teach you the shortcuts to obtaining your answers without having to go through this. Just continue till we get there. Thank you.
Mathematics tutorial with Marjorie.
I want to believe you are really following my teachings, because even I myself, I'm really convinced that I've tried to explain it to a layman's understanding. But however, let's continue. In this particular example, now it's becoming easier. So all you have to do, here the coefficient of x squared is 1, so we go ahead to break down 9. We know that 9 is a number that can be obtained by multiplying two similar numbers, which is 3 and 3. So 3 times 3 is 9. But 3 plus 3 is not equals to minus 6. Don't forget, at this point, the coefficient of x is minus 6. So which means that the two numbers are not 2 positive 3. But let me say this, because it's been proven true that anytime you have the middle term to be a negative sign, then definitely the two numbers must be negative. That is, if the middle term is negative and the last term is positive, note the two numbers must be negative. So that means that the two numbers will be minus 3 and minus 3. These are the two numbers. So let's multiply and see. Minus 3 times minus 3 will give us plus 9. But minus 3 plus minus 3. Now this is minus 3, so you have minus 3. Plus minus is minus, and then 3. Minus 3 minus 3 is minus 6. So you can see that the two numbers are minus 3x and minus 3x. This is what you substitute in the place of minus 6x. Okay, let's continue. So this is going to be, remember the two numbers, okay, this will be x squared. Remember the two numbers are minus 3x and minus 3x. So put minus 3x, one. The next one is minus 3x, minus 3x. Of course, you see that minus 3x minus 3x will give us minus 6x. Then plus 9 equals to 0. From there, you group it in twos. That's going to be x squared minus 3x minus into 3x plus 9 equals to 0. Now remember this, that the bracket must always be the same in terms of numbers and signs. So having grouped it into twos, you will agree with me that if the first bracket is minus, this one will also be minus. How? Now let's use this sign to open this bracket. Minus times 3x is minus 3x. Now if I change this place to minus, then minus times minus will also give us plus. So which means that because I have grouped it in twos and I've introduced a bracket, definitely you change this positive sign to negative sign. Because if you open the bracket, minus times 3x will give us minus 3x, and minus times minus 9 will give us plus 9. Alright, we go. So now factorize. X is here, factor out x into what is left here is x minus 3 minus 3 is here, this is 3 times 3, which is 9. So 3 is common, I'll factor out 3 into, I'm left with x here, minus 1, 3, equals to 0. So the two brackets are the same, you pick one, x minus 3, into, then x minus 3, equals to 0. Don't forget the rule, that if the product of two things are equal to 0, then it means that the first one, x minus 3, equals to 0, or the second one, x minus 3 equals to 0. Now let's find x. So x here equals to minus 3 will cross to become plus 3, or minus 3 here will cross to become plus 3. So therefore, the values of x are 3 or 3. So we always say that x is equals to, since they are similar, you always see 3 twice. So the value of x, or the root of this equation, is 3 twice. Okay, let me handle this, and I want to believe at this point you have really understood how to solve quadratic by factorization method. So let me quickly run through this one, which says that x squared minus x minus 6 equals to 0. What do you do? Simply break down 6 into 2 and 3, because 2 times 3 will give us 6. But now let's see which one is going to carry a negative sign. Now let's assume you don't know. Give this negative. Let's add minus 2 plus 3. Minus 2 plus 3 will give us 1. And what we have here is minus 1. So it means that you attach negative sign to the big number, because 2 times minus 3 will give us minus 6. But 2 plus minus 3 will give us 2. Plus minus is minus, and then 3. So 2 minus 3 is minus 1, which is this minus 1 here. So it means that the two numbers are 2x and minus 3x. Those are the two numbers we're going to introduce into this place. So you have x squared minus 3x plus 2x minus 6 equals to 0. Then you group it in twos as x squared minus 3x plus 2x minus 6 equals to 0. Let's factorize. X is common, factor out x into 1x is there, minus 3, plus this is 2 times 3, which is 6. So 2 is common, and factor out 2 into x minus this 3 equals to 0. So the brackets are the same. Pick out 1, x minus 3 into x plus 2 equals to 0. With that, you'll agree with me that either x minus 3 equals to 0, which implies that x is equals to 3. You know, when this minus 3 crosses, it becomes 3. Or x plus 2 equals to 0, which implies that x equals to minus 2. When plus 2 crosses, it becomes minus 2. So therefore, the roots of the equation are minus 2 and 3. These are the roots of that quadratic equation. Now, I'm going to move to lesson 3, which is use of completing the squares method to solve quadratic equation. But just before I do, to round up this factorization method, I'll still need to introduce something very, very important as this. Let's say I have x squared plus 8x and I want to solve this. This is still quadratic, but it is an incomplete quadratic. In what sense? Quadratic has 3 terms, 1, 2, 3, which we have seen examples. But this one is still quadratic, even though it is not up to 3 terms. So when you encounter something like this, what do you simply do? So I'm going to give us maybe 2 examples under this, and I round up with factorization method. So stay with me. I'll be right back. I have a problem like this to solve, even though it doesn't follow this pattern, this general form of a quadratic, but though it is still quadratic, what makes an expression or an equation quadratic, don't forget, is that the value or the power of x must always be 2. So this is power 2, this is power 2. So for the fact that they are power 2, they must produce 2 roots. But this is not complete. So what do? You just go ahead to factorize. Very simple. So now if you look at this, you see that x is common here, x is common here. You factor out x into what is left here is 4x. You know you have brought out 1x. So 4x is left plus 3 equals to 0. So this is a product of 2 things now. X times 4x plus 3, 2 terms. It means that the first one is equals to 0, or the second one, 4x plus 3, equals to 0. So x is equals to 0, or remember, plus 3 will cross. So you have 4x is equals to minus 3. When plus 3 crosses, it becomes minus 3. Divide both sides by 4, which is the coefficient of x. That means that x is equals to minus 3 over 4. So therefore, x is equals to 0 or minus 3 over 4. So these are the roots of this quadratic equation, which is very, very simple. Now, looking at the second example, which is 2x squared minus 5x is equals to 0. Very simple. X is common. Remember, there are 2x here, x times x, which is x squared. So x is common, you factor out 1x into what is left here is 2, and the remaining 1x, that's 2x minus. Remember, you factor out this x, so you are left with 5 equals to 0. So this implies x is equals to 0, or 2x minus 5 equals to 0. So x is equals to 0, or now take minus 5 to this side, that will be that 2x is equals to 5. Minus 5 will cross to become plus 5. So you divide both sides by the coefficient of x, which is 2. 2 goes into 2, is gone. So that x is equals to 5 over 2, or 0. These are the roots of this particular quadratic equation. Now, before I round up, let me quickly give us another example, which is, let's say I have x squared minus 64 equals to 0. Now, there's what we call difference of 2 squares in mathematics. If you have something like this, x squared minus y squared, and I ask you to factorize this, this is difference of 2 squares, and there is a way to factorize difference of 2 squares. But I'm going to make a video on this and explain it deeper. But on a very light note, if I am to expand this, I'm going to ask myself, how many x is here? 2, you bring out 1. Minus how many y is here? 2, you bring out 1. Now, how many 1x is still remaining here and 1y is still here. So I'll put it in another bracket, this time with a positive sign. That is how to factorize difference of 2 squares. And if you expand this, you will get back to this. For instance, x times x squared, x times y plus xy, minus y times x minus xy, minus y times y minus y squared. So this is x squared. Xy minus xy will give us, is gone, 0. Then minus y squared minus y squared. So you see, expanding this takes you back to this. That's how to apply difference of two squares. Which means that mathematically, if I have a term squared and then two terms such that the first term is squared, I must find a way to square the second term, provided they are separated by a negative sign. So I can write this as x squared minus, what is the index form of 64? 8 squared, because 8 times 8 is 64. This is equals to, having seen that x squared minus 8 squared is equals to 0, this takes us to the concept of difference of two squares. So since the first term is squared and the second term is squared and they are separated by negative sign, you apply that method that says that x squared minus y squared is equals to x minus y into x plus y. So what am I going to do here? This is going to be pick one x minus pick one 8 into pick the other x plus 8 equals to 0. So here you can say x minus 8
Mathematics, 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 mathematics tutorial with
x is equals to 8 or x is equal to minus 8. So we can now conclude that x is equals to minus 8, 8, minus 8 or 8. So this is how to solve this type of quadratic. But you see, if we have x squared minus 64 equals to 0. So another easy way to do this, I'm done, but another easy way to do this is that you are looking for x, so you collect like terms by saying x squared equals to minus 64 will cross to become plus 64. Now this square will cross the equality sign so that x will become, remember when a square crosses equality sign, it becomes square root of 64. Now because it was power 2 that crosses to become square root, you say this is plus or minus. So whenever a square crosses an equality sign, it becomes plus or minus square root, so that x will be equals to plus or minus 8. So this is exactly how to solve quadratic equations by factorization method. Let's say that's the end of lesson 2. In my next lesson, which will be lesson 3, we're going to be learning how to solve quadratic equation by method of completing the squares. Stay tuned as I come your way next time. Thank you.